Hello, I've been uploading quite a few videos which have been coming from the last 2 years of the Atheist experience, and people have noticed that a lot of the calls I'm uploading are more about Matt's anger and severe beatings up on Christians and sometimes non-Christians. And I'm going to do another one in a moment, one that I think is particularly savage, maybe justifiably so. But before that, on this same show, after hearing the call that I'm going to play, a Christian called in 10-20 minutes later, and he made a comment on it, and I'm going to play that now first. So listen to this.
Talk to Gary. Hi, Gary. You are on the Atheist.
Hey, Gary, Connecticut.
Oh,
yeah.
Hi, Gary.
You ready? Hi, I got it. Hi, I gotta say it's. Thank you. There seems to be a little delay, maybe, but I gotta say, if you guys ever want to release a blooper reel, I think only maybe people on the line on hold can hear the other end of the callers, but it's borderline abuse. I mean, some of these people just are fired up, but
Okay, you heard what that caller said, borderline abuse. He later referred to Shannon and Matt as ferocious atheists, so I think it's fair to say that he's probably referring to them and not the callers. So let's have a listen to this call, which came in before his. See whether he's justified.
Mark.
Come forth, Mark, and speak to us, atheists. What would you like to talk about today, Mark?
I love being with my people.
I'm not convinced we're your people yet.
We'll find out.
I'd like you to listen to the tone of his voice. He sounds fairly calm at the moment, and compare with what he's going to sound like in about 5 or 6 minutes.
What's up?
I feel that, on a scale of 1 to 10, as far as atheism goes, I'm a 10. And what my point that brings me to you is, and I've brought this up before in other shows, is that I often feel that, it's not that I'm an atheist because you haven't shown me any evidence. I believe there's no God. It just simply is a reality for me. And I believe that, many of the people who are on these shows believe the same thing. And yet we tolerate a world where people are, gathering every Sunday or Friday or whenever their holy day is, and they're speaking to no one. And in any other context, this would be considered...
Don't do it.
Having a mental illness.
And you did it.
And you fucking did it. All right.
He was warned. Should have listened to the warning, but, at least he expressed his opinion, honestly.
I'm going to start because I'm going to bow out incredibly quickly. First of all, you said literally, we tolerate a world where people are gathering and speaking to no one. Yes, that's called freedom. They're free to do that. They're free to exercise their religious liberties. But then you went the step further. And by the way, the note from the call screener says, quote, time for AXP to call out these stupid callers for suffering from mental illness. And on that note, Shannon?
I really believe that we absolutely, objectively, abjectly, and with impunity need to call out people who say the types of things that you just said for various reasons. One is that you, in this call, are assessing yourself, it seems, as superior intellectually and utilizing that position and saying basically that people who have mental illnesses or are neurodiverse are less intellectually than you or have some sort of problem. You're using it as a pejorative. A, that's not the case. And B, that's reprehensible as far as I'm concerned. It further stigmatizes mental illness, and it does not need to be stigmatized further than it already is. Secondly, you're just objectively incorrect. From a clinical perspective, if you study the field at all, you are objectively incorrect. It is not a mental illness. You could classify it as some sort of crowd conformity. You could classify it as some sort of indoctrination. There's myriad other ways that you could look at the phenomenon of religiosity. None of them fit whatsoever into the paradigm of what anybody who is worth their salt as a clinician would classify as mental illness. It is the most shallow way to look at this, and it is just ridiculous. It borders on repugnant, really, to be honest with you.
I think it's crossed that line.
You're saying it's akin to saying I am of superior intellect and quality, and people who do not believe the same types of things that I believe are somehow deficient. And you know who else is deficient? People with mental illnesses. So let's just draw some lines, and we just won't even talk to them. We'll shun those people. That is just, why on earth do you feel as though that's a position that is viable and worth holding?
Number
Well, Matt looks very, very satisfied with that, what can I call it, rebuke.
one, you're a brilliant woman, but in no way, shape, or form did I say that I was intellectually superior to anyone. I
didn't say you said that. I said that is what you're portraying.
I thought I was smarter than everyone else, and trust me, I'm not smarter than.
Well, if he's accusing believers of being mentally ill, then I suppose that would entail him being smarter than people who are mentally ill. He's got the healthy mental faculties that they don't possess.
And anyone else.
We know that.
What are you saying then? Because that is what you portray when you say these types of things. I'm not saying you explicitly said them, but that is what you portray when you say something like this.
So let me ask you, do you believe there's a God?
No.
No.
Did I? Yes.
No.
Did I suddenly cure myself of a mental illness the moment I realized I was wrong? Also, no.
So let me ask you this real quick, Mark. Mark, shut up and listen to me. If you ran across someone who is mentally ill and delusional, what's your perspective on that person?
Well, it depends on how it manifests itself.
Should they be mocked?
There are a lot of people who like to have,
should they be mocked or belittled for their mental illness?
Well, certainly not. But when we're having
good, then why are you doing that? Why are you setting up mental illness as a pejorative and then calling the callers stupid and saying that we need to call them out for mental illness when, as Shannon pointed out, and as I pointed out countless times, what they're engaged in is not in any way mental illness. So you are factually wrong, and yet you are using mental illness as a way to disparage someone, even though you're acknowledging that you shouldn't even be disparaging them if they were mentally ill. So you're wrong at every possible turn here.
Well, you said that I called Shannon stupid.
No, we didn't say that. We said that you were portraying a position of intellectual superiority by referring to the callers as stupid and trying to diminish them as if they're mentally ill. I'm sorry. Shut the fuck up. I'm sorry that you don't understand our words any more than you understand mental illness. But when Shannon called you out for portraying yourself as intellectually superior, that was an honest assessment of both what you told the call screener and what you started with on here.
So you're pretty good with people all over the place that in any other context would be questioned if you spoke to someone.
They wouldn't, though. Okay, Mark, I'm going to try to calm this down. Can I calm this down for a second?
Yeah, because I'm going to hang up on him for refusing to acknowledge what we said and instead going on to claiming that we're good with people doing stuff. So I'll shut up. Shannon, go ahead. I'm
going to calm this down for a second. First, I didn't say that you were explicitly stating that. And if I didn't, and if I portrayed it as, or if you...
Okay, I'm going to move on to a later stage in the video. Obviously, just to say that there are many, many reasons why people have got religious beliefs. And he himself said that for him, his reality is that there's no God. And there are people that, for them, their reality is that there is a God. We can argue about who's got the most evidence on their side. We will, as atheists, will say that there's a lack of evidence to back up what they're saying, but they will claim that they've got evidence to support their beliefs. They've got the Bible, they've got these other things, they've got personal experience. And as Matt has said, that in his opinion, a lot of the times it's down to a failure in critical thinking. There are many, many reasons. He did not have to go to mental illness. There are so many different reasons why people hold religious beliefs, and I'm baffled really why he called in. But let's just see, I'm baffled that he called in expecting that he would get some kind of sympathetic hearing to this point of view. Let's just go towards the end of the call and see how it resolves itself.
Like, how would you treat a delusion versus how you would treat a belief in God? Like, what's the pathology?
That's a good question. I thought of that. It's a very good question.
Based. These people go out and vote to take away women's rights, to take away, voter.
I agree with that, but that's not because. So you're saying that people who are mentally ill don't vote the way that they should? So that's a byproduct of mental illness, is what you're saying, right? So people who are mentally ill aren't capable of doing that. Like, what line are you drawing here?
Well,
why do you need to classify them as mentally ill? That's different from Christians vote that way because they're indoctrinated and they're conforming to their group. They're tribal, like most of us are. That's another part of human nature, and they believe that they are right. And they are
He didn't answer her question. She asked a very good question. If you're saying that it's a mental illness, and well, we know it's not, but if it is, for example, with delusions, I understand that for the elderly who are suffering from paranoid delusions, there are certain drugs that they can take that will help to alleviate this condition. And if it's true that religious belief is a clinical problem, then what would the treatment be, as Shannon said? But he didn't address that.
Enforced by the society at large around them and their in-group, so they act accordingly. That is just what you would expect to see psychologically, given the circumstances that they were in.
Okay, nearly at the end of the call.
Mark, I just want you to stop doing it, please. Like, it's just, I'm trying. Like, to Matt's point, like, you can't prove it. People are going to believe in things that we really ardently believe are incorrect, right? That's why we do what we do. Maybe this is what we do is probably a little bit more productive than what you're doing right now, which is saying that dialogue should stop because you believe these people to be mentally ill. I get fired up about stuff like this because I think that being a mental health advocate is significantly more needed. So perhaps my tone could be a little bit better, but I would really ardently like you to reevaluate your position on this and stop doing it. It's not correct. It's not good. It's not beneficial. And I don't even believe that it's a step towards what your stated goals were, which is stopping people from voting against things like women's rights. Because just calling people mentally ill and then disengaging is not going to change anybody's mind.
I don't think that I was belligerent, but I think I was met with belligerence.
Cry me a fucking river.
Well, I think that showing hostility towards the religious and obviously the mentally ill probably counts as belligerent. So let's see if Matt agrees.
Shit on mental health issues, you shit on mental illness, you shit on religious people and accuse them of something that is not true and that you can't prove. I'm sorry that you were met with belligerence. Some of us were religious. We didn't recover from a mental illness. Some of us have friends and family who are religious. They're not suffering from mental illness. Shannon tried desperately and thoroughly to explain to you how you are just factually wrong about mental illness, but you won't hear it. And I asked you if you could disprove their God, which is a requirement for you to conclude that they are in fact delusional, and you couldn't do that either. So I'm sorry that you feel that you were met with belligerence. Maybe if you hadn't started with an attack on the mentally ill, you might not have been.
Well, I wanted to get the ball rolling,
Yeah, good job getting that ball rolling. Now, go put it on a gag so you stop talking.
Mark, can you just agree to that it's not a good idea to do it? Like, can I get that from you? That you should stop equating belief in a deity of any form with mental illness?
That is it. I was mistreated. And I just, you could have told me I was wrong in much different ways. But
go fuck yourself.
So Mark got quite a roasting there, didn't he? Deservedly so, perhaps. I suppose that's debatable. The call screener said that he claimed that the religious were showing signs of mental illness and that they should be called out for being stupid and showing signs of mental illness. So that's how they rebutted him based on that, really, because he initially started saying that in any other context, talking to something that's not there will be considered mental illness. And of course, he could have followed on from that and said, but however, I'm not saying it is mental illness, but how can we explain this? He could have gone down another route, but no, he really is convinced that he really did argue that it is mental. He didn't argue, actually, really. It wasn't much of an argument. He just asserted that it is mental illness, sign of mental illness. He said he wanted to get the ball rolling, which I thought was funny. He didn't get the ball rolling very far. It was kicked very, very strongly back right between his legs, wasn't it? He implied that we shouldn't tolerate people praying in churches. We shouldn't tolerate religious belief, which, I mean, if you go back to Stalinist Russia, I mean, religion was, the state was officially non-religious, of course. Religion was not encouraged. I believe from people I know who lived in Russia that the state turned a blind eye to religious belief. But the line was that there was no God, that we live in a purely materialistic universe, etc. But I wouldn't say that as such there was lack of tolerance in the USSR for religious belief. They just turned a blind eye to it, as far as I know. And I don't have a problem with religious belief. I don't have a problem with, of course, I just think that they're wrong. So it's not a case for me of not tolerating. There are some points of view that I can't tolerate, but by and large, I don't consider it to be a question of tolerating people with different points of view. Just to give you an example, I can't tolerate the point of view that in any way Russia had any justification for invading Ukraine. That's an example of a point of view that I can't tolerate. I do find it repugnant, and I will argue very strongly against it. I will even block people that have got that point of view because I can't tolerate them, frankly. But religious belief, no, I don't have an issue. I don't have an issue with it. It's not a case of tolerating it as far as I'm concerned. It clearly is not anything to do with mental illness. I've spoken to people who are genuinely mentally ill or show signs of some mental illness. I know an old person who believes she's being victimized. She told me quite seriously that when she goes out shopping, she's being followed by people. She goes in her car. I said, well, how many people follow you? She says typically 100 cars follow her to the supermarket. And she goes into real detail about this. And she's 80 years old. I wish she would go to the doctor and they might be able to help her with some medication, but because she believes it's real, she doesn't believe she's ill. So yeah, I mean, I've seen what real mental illness is, and religious belief for me is just people who've reached a different conclusion. They've used another metric, they've used another worldview, epistemological system to arrive at a particular belief, and it definitely is not mental illness. They just hold these beliefs for other reasons. As Matt has said, it can be a failure in critical thinking, it can be indoctrination, lots of different reasons. What else to say? Yeah, so in terms of the way they treated him, okay, this other caller said it was borderline abuse. Maybe he deserved it, I don't know. In terms of calling him out, yep, they did absolutely 100% good job on that. In terms of persuading him that he was wrong, I don't think they did such a good job. I think that they did not really engage with him. Partly his own fault, because when he was given a chance to talk after Shannon's initial rebuttal, and he sounded very hurt, he said, "Excuse me, I never claimed that I'm intellectually superior to these people." Shannon kind of retreated from that, but I don't think she should have, because he's saying that a whole group of people are showing signs of mental illness. Now, the thing about mental illness is it means that your mental faculties are impaired, your intellectual faculties are impaired. So no, he is claiming that he's mentally superior and that he's not mentally ill, but they are. So I think that she should have probably reinforced that, because rather than engaging with the actual issue, he went down this kind of butthurt path of, I never said that, but he did. He didn't say it in exactly those words, but he is saying that other people, he's superior intelligence, superior mental faculties to other people. And he didn't even have any evidence to back that up, because when Matt said, can you prove that their God doesn't exist? No, he can't prove it. So his belief that there is no God and their belief that there is a God, they're both unfalsifiable positions. So I don't really see that he had any grounds for claiming intellectual superiority over anybody else just because he holds a different belief. Yeah, so I would have handled it differently. I would have tried to persuade him and not pushed him into a corner, and not left him in a position where he's hanging up and becoming even more entrenched in his own point of view, doubling down. I don't expect to see him calling in and saying, look guys, you're right and I was wrong, I've thought about it, I've reviewed the call, and I don't know how I reached that conclusion. It's a failure of my own critical thinking, but yeah, I was wrong and I agree with you. But he'll never do that now, because he was very strongly handled, and there was no proper dialogue which could have led to a result where he would have gone away and maybe thought about it a bit more and reached a different conclusion. So in that sense, it was a failure. In the sense that they called him out and humiliated him, it was a success. Okay, that's all for now. Let me know what you think. I'll be back again with another video soon. Bye for now.